We continue now at the top of Daf Tzadi Beis Amud Aleph and Meseches Bava Kamma. This is Bava Kamma Daf 92a. And the previous Amud, the Gemara is discussing the prohibition of cutting down trees. And the Gemara said that first a person should cut down a tree that does not have fruit, and only after that, if necessary, cut down a tree that bears fruit. And then the Brisa concludes, Yachol afilu mu'ula b'damim. Now I might think that's true even in a situation where the wood of the tree is actually worth more than the fruits. Maybe even over there the barren tree comes first. Talmud lomar rak, that's why the pasuk says rak. The pasuk where it says the word rak tells us that in a situation where the wood is worth more than the fruits, so then you don't have to cut down the barren tree first, you can even cut down the fruit-bearing tree. And Rashi explains, Yachal afilu mu'ula b'damim, l'kora yoser miperos. In other words, if you had a situation where as beams, as wood, it's worth more than the fruits, yehei srak kodem lo, I might think even in that situation the barren tree should come first. Talmud lomar rak miet hakdama. The word rak is an exclusion, and saying we don't have that halacha of precedence that the barren tree comes first in that situation. And the Gemara continues, Shmuel aisi le arise tamre. Shmuel, his sharecropper, brought him dates. Achel taima buhu taima dechamran. When he ate it, he tasted the taste of wine in the dates. Amar le said to him, my hi, what's going on over here? Amar le said to him, Bene gufne kaimi. These were grown near the vines. They were among the vines. Amar, so Shmuel said, Mechashi bechamra kuli hai. Is it weakening the wine this much? Lamachar aisili mekoraihu. So tomorrow just bring me from the roots, meaning to say you should uproot these trees because they're weakening the product of the wine. Rashi explains Mekoraihu, Mekor Shalahen Vikar, and Rashi has two explanations. The first explanation is he said to uproot it, take it by the roots. That's the idea of the Mekor, the source. Lashon Acher, another explanation, Have Likor, Shehu Rach Lechel, bring me the core, which is the soft part of the wood, that's the soft part of that can be eaten. V'gadal Saviv Sharashav, it grows around the roots. What that essentially means is, Kolomar, it means to say, Kolo Ikaram, Mimnei Shemafsid V'nechol Asakor. If we're going to consume the core, that's going to ruin the roots as well, and so it has the same basic idea, the same basic meaning, but the idea is again that in this situation you can destroy the date trees. And the Gemara continues at the two dots along the same lines. Rav Chisda chaza tali begufni. Rav Chisda saw the date palms among the vines. Amar leila Arisei said to his sharecropper, Akrinhu, you should uproot these. Gufni kani dikli, because the vines can acquire the date palms. Dikli lo kani gufni, but the date palms cannot acquire the vines, meaning to say the vines, the wine is worth more, and therefore the date palms should be cut down. Rashi explains, Gufni kani dikli means as follows, Midmei hayayin, from the money you can get from selling the wine, Yecholan anu liknos karkos, we could actually buy land. V'ilu dikli lo kani gufni, but the other way around you can't. The date palms you can't sell, it's not worth enough. Ein shivchan ola ela davar muat, the profits from the date palms are only a small amount, and therefore again they get cut down because of the vines. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah. Afal pishu no saying lo, even though he pays him, let's say a person injures another person, even though he pays him for that, ein nimchalo, the person is not forgiven, ad sheyivakesh mimeno, until he asks him for forgiveness. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, v'yata hashev eshes v'gomer, it's talking about the story with Avimelech and Avraham, and it seems to indicate in those psukim that Avimelech is to ask forgiveness from Avraham so that Avraham will daven on his behalf. Now, how do we know that if the person doesn't forgive him, that is considered achzarius, that's considered to be a bad midah? Shenemar, as it says, Vayispal Avraham Elho Elokim, Vayirpa Elokim es Avimelech, it says that Avraham did daven, and Hashem healed Avimelech. And the Mishnah continues, Ha'omer sima es eni akita es yodi shiver es ragli chayev. If a person says to somebody else, blind me, I want you to knock out my eye, I want you to cut my hand, I want you to break my leg, it doesn't make a difference that he gave him permission. If the person actually does it, the person is chayev. Even almanas liftor chayev, even if the person says, I want you to do it, and he makes it explicit on condition you will be exempt, still the person is not exempt, the person is chayev for the injury. Kara es kasusi shiver es kadi chayev. Let's say a person says, tear my garment, or break my pitcher. In that case, also giving permission is not enough to exempt the person. The person is still chayiv for the damage. However, almanas liftor, in that situation, if the person says explicitly that you should break it, tear it on the condition that you'll be exempt, so in that case, pater, in that case, he will be exempt. Asay kain ish ploni, let's say he says, I want you to do that to so-and-so, almanas liftor, on the condition that you'll be exempt, chayiv, in that case, he's going to be chayiv. You can't say that I want you to do it to another person to be pater. He'll be chayiv, bein begufo, bein b'mamono, he's chayiv whether he injures him on his body, or whether he injures him in terms of his money, let's say his clothing or his vessels. And Rashi notes, Afal Pisho no saying lo stamahi, this Mishnah is a stam Mishnah, it's unattributed, velo Rabbi Akiva Kamarlo. This is not a continuation of Rabbi Akiva from the last Mishnah, it's not only Rabbi Akiva's opinion. And the Gemara says, Tanu Rabban, the rabbis taught, Kol elu sha'amru demei boshto, all of these which we are speaking about, it is the value of the boshas, the value of the humiliation. Rashi explains, Kol elu sha'amru sela, mono, masayim, medalid, meos, demei boshasein, meaning all of the values we had in the previous Mishnah about what you have to pay for these various things, that's talking about the amount of money you're paying for the boshas. Avotzaro, but in terms of his pain, afilu hevi kol elei nevayu shaba'olam, even if he brings all of the elim, meaning all of the rams of nevayus, the choicest things, even if he brings all of those, ein nimchalo, he will not be forgiven ad sheyevakesh mimenu, until he asks him forgiveness. The point over here is that you can't pay to get the forgiveness. That's just the value, the amount you're giving for the boshas. But in terms of the pain inflicted that you need forgiveness, so for that it doesn't matter what you bring. Rashi says, Avol tsar shedoeg al boshta, the fact that the person's worrying about the humiliation, eino nimchalo, that's not going to be forgiven just by paying. He has to be mevakesh mimenu, he has to ask him forgiveness. Shenemar, as it says, brings the same pasuk as our Mishnah. Hashev eshes o ish kinovihu, it says you have to return the wife of the man, referring to Avram, because he's a prophet, v'yispal badcha, and he'll daven for you. And so the Gemara now says, the eshes navi boy hadure, is it only the wife of a prophet that has to be returned? The eshes acher lo boy hadure, if it would be the wife of another person, he wouldn't have to return. What's the meaning of the pasuk that it says kinavihu? And so the Gemara says, Amar Reb Shmuel bar Nachmani, Amar Reb Yonasan. Reb Shmuel bar Nachmani says that Reb Yonasan says, Hashev eshes ish mikol makom, of course, return the wife of the man no matter what. And that which you say, Hagoy gam tzadik taro, so you're claiming, you Avimelech are claiming that you're a tzaddik and therefore you shouldn't be punished. Halohu amar li achosehi, because didn't Avram say that's my sister? V'hi gam hi amra achahu, and she also said that's my brother. So that's not a claim that you're innocent, because Navihu, because he's a prophet, ukvar limit, he already knows, it's already understood, achsanoi shabol ear, that if a guest comes to the city, aliske achila ushasiya sholanoso, do they ask him about what he needs to eat, what he needs to drink? Or al iske ishto sholanoso, do they ask him about his wife? Ishtochahi achosli, do they ask him, is that your wife or is that your sister? Meaning to say, already the way they were asking the questions, it was obvious that they were guilty, that they were up to something from the outset. Mikan leben Noach, and from here we know that a ben Noach, shenerag, he's held responsible, he's killed, shahayelo lilmod v'lo lamad, even if it's a situation where he should have known, he should have learned, he should have understood, and he didn't, he is held responsible for not understanding something that should have been understood. And Rashi explains, Shahayalo Lilmod, he should have learned, means he should have learned Derech Eretz, he should have learned proper Derech Eretz, Velo Lamad, he didn't learn that. Midukama Le Rachmana Navihu, that's what we understand from the Pasuk, where it says he's a Navi, Damashma Ein Mamish Bidvarecha, Veroya Tole Harag. The point of the Pasuk is that your claim that you're innocent is not a good claim, and therefore it is fitting that you should be killed. That's why you have to ask for forgiveness. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The pasuk says by Avimelech, Ki Otzor Otzar Hashem. It says that Hashem surely closed up for Avimelech and all of those around him. And the Gemara says, Amar Reb Elazar says, Shtei Atziros Halalu Lama. What are these two Atziros? It uses a double language. Ki Otzor Otzar. What is that referring to? And the Gemara says, Achas Beish. One is referred to by the men. Shechva Zera. That refers to the Shechva Zera, the seed. Shtayim Beish. And then there are two things that are being referred to by the women. Shechva Zera Veleda. It's referring to the Shechva Zera and also the ability to give birth. And the Gemara continues, B'masnisatan, and the Braisa was taught, Shtayim B'ish, it's referring to two things by the man, Shechva Zera, it's referring to the Shechva Zera, Uketanim, and the small ones, that refers to urinating, Shalosha B'ish, and then three by the women, Shechva Zera, Uketanim V'leda, refers to Shechva Zera, and Ketanim, and also giving birth. And Ravina Amar Shalosh B'ish, Ravina says there were actually three by the men, Shechva Zera, Uketanim, Ufi Tabas, it refers to Shechva Zera and Ketanim, the small ones, to urinate, and Pitabas refers to the fact that they couldn't go to the bathroom at all. And Arba B'ish, and then four by the women, Shechva Zera, Veleda, Uketanim, Pitabas, again refers to Shechva Zera, giving birth, and the Ketanim, the ability to urinate, and Pitabas, they couldn't go to the bathroom at all. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, Ba'ad kol rechem, it says again, by all the wombs, they were all closed up in the house of Avimelech. Amri devei Rabbi Yanai, they say in the yeshiva of Rabbi Yanai, Afilu tarnagolas shel beis Avimelech, even a chicken in the house of Avimelech, lo hitila beitzasa, wasn't able to lay her egg. And the Gemara continues, Amar le Rava l'Rava bar Mori, Rava said to Rava bar Mori, Menoha milsa do Amar Rabbanan, from where do we know that which the Rabbanan say, Kol ha'mevakesh rachamim al chaver, that anyone who asks for mercy for his friend, v'hu tzarech la'oso davar, and he needs that very same thing, hu nena tchila, that he will be answered first. Amar Lei said back to him, because it's written, V'Hashem shov as shavus Eov v'hispalo ve'ad re'eu, it says that Hashem changed the fortune of Eov when he davened on behalf of his friend. Amar Lei, he said back to him, At amin mehasam, you have the source from over there, V'ana amina mehacha, but I have it from over here, from the story of Avram and Avimelech. The pasuk says, "Vayispalel Avram Elohu Elokim." It says that Avram davened to Hashem. Vayirpa Elokim es Avimelech. Then it says that Hashem healed Avimelech. Ves Ishto ve'amhosa v'gomer. It says he healed his wife. It says he healed everyone in his household. Uchsiv, and it's written, "V'Hashem pakad es Sarah kasher Amar v'gomer." It says that Hashem remembered Sarah, and so we understand that to mean kasher Amar Avram El Avimelech. It's the same that Avram, as he said to Avimelech, meaning he davened on behalf of Avimelech, so he had that same tefillah was answered on his behalf as well. And Rashi explains pakad. It says again, Hashem remembered Sarah. Midoloksiv vayifkod es Sarah. It doesn't say vayifkod. Uchsiv pakad. It says pakad. That's mashma pakad kvar techila Avimelech. That implies that Hashem remembered her before Avimelech. We see that she was answered first. And the Gemara continues, Amarle Rava l'Rabba bar Mori. Rava said to Rabba bar Mori, Menoha milsa damri inshi. From where do we know this idea that people say, Bahade hutza lucky karba, that together with the thorn, the cabbage is struck? The idea is that sometimes the good goes when the bad is removed. Amarle said back to him, because it's written, Lama sarivu Eli, why do you contend with me? Kulchem pashatem binum Hashem. Hashem says, you all have sinned. And we see even the good are included in that rebuke. Amar Le, he said back to him, Ata Amrit Mehasam, you say the sources from over there, Va'ano Amina Mehacha, but I say the sources from over here, from the following pasuk, Arona Meyantem Lishmor Mitzvosai V'sorosai, until when will you refuse to keep my mitzvahs and my Torah? And again, even in that case, Moshe Rabbeinu is included in that rebuke, even those who did not sin. And Rashi explains, Bahade hutza lucky karva means kotz hagadol etzel akrov. Let's say you have a thorn that grows by the cabbage. Kishabola akro, if you want to uproot that thorn, pa'amim shenakar hakrovimo. Sometimes the cabbage is going to be struck as well. It'll be uprooted as well. V'nimsa loka b'shvilo. Because of the thorn, it's also going to be struck. Kolomar, the idea over here is to say shcheinei rasha lokin imo. Sometimes the neighbors of the wicked, they get struck together with the wicked. Kulchem pashatem af hanavi b'mashman. That pasuk of kulchem pashatem, even the navi seems to be included. And similarly, Arona me'antam, until when will you refuse? Moshe v'Aaron bechlal, Moshe and Aaron are also included, even though they did not sin. And the Gemara continues, Amarle Rava l'Rabba bar Mori. Rava said to Rabba bar Mori, Ksiv, it's written in the pasuk, Umiksei echav loka chamisha anoshim. It says that Yosef took from his brothers 5 men to stand them before Paro. Maninu chamisha, who are the 5 brothers? Amarle said back to him, Hachi Amar Rabbi Yochanan, this is what Rabbi Yochanan said, it's Osan shehuchvalu b'shemos. It's all of the brothers that their names are mentioned twice when Moshe gives the blessings to the Shvatim. The idea is that these are the weaker brothers, and Yosef stood in front of Paro, the weaker brothers, so that they wouldn't be chosen to be soldiers. The Gemara says Yehuda nam yichvule michvul, but Yehuda also, his name is also doubled in the brachas, and surely Yehuda was not one of the weaker brothers. Amar Lei said back to him, Lemil Yehuda ichvul. That was for a matter particular to Yehuda that his name was doubled, as we learned. Amar Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani, Amar Rav Yonasan, because Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani said that Rav Yonasan said, Mai dechsiv, what does it mean when it's written in the pasuk Yechi Ruvain ve'al Yamos v'Mesav Mispar? It says that Ruvain should live, he shouldn't die, and then immediately it says V'zos li Yehuda, and this is for Yehuda. Why is there this connection between Reuven and Yehuda? Kalosan arboim shana shahayu Yisrael b'midbar. All of those 40 years that Klal Yisrael was in the wilderness, hayu atzmosav shel Yehuda megolgolin ba'aron. The bones of Yehuda were rolling around in the coffin. Ad sheba Moshe v'ikesh rachamim, until Moshe came and asked for mercy. Amar lefanav Ribbono shel Olam. Moshe Rabbeinu said, Ribbono shel Olam migaram l'Reuven sheyoda. Who caused that Reuven would admit his sin? Yehuda. Was Yehuda. Yehuda admitted his sin, and that caused Reuven to admit. And that's why Reuven is included here. Miyad Shama Hashem Kol Yehuda, and at that point in time, immediately, Hashem listened to the voice of Yehuda, and all Evare L'Shafa, and his limbs went properly into the sockets. Lo Havik Hamaskli L'Masifta Derakia, but they still didn't let him in to the Yeshiva Shalmala, and so the pasuk says, V'yal Amo Tivianu, he was brought to his nation, he was let in. Lo Havi Yada Ma'iko Amri Rabbanon U'Lemishka U'Mitrach B'Hadei Rabbanon, but still, he was allowed in, but he didn't know what the Rabbanon were saying there, and he didn't know how to go back and forth in discussion with the Rabbanon, and so that's why the pasuk goes on to say in the brachos, Yodav Ravlo. Yodav Ravlo means that he was able to now discuss with the Rabbanon, but still lo havesalek leishmaitza aliva de hilchasa, but he wasn't able to say over a halacha according to what the halacha would actually be paskind, and to that the bracha was ve'ezer mitzarav tiyah, he would be able to be successful over his enemies. That means to say that he's able to say the sugya according to the halacha. And Rashi explains, Osam shehuchvalu shemosim, it was those brothers whose names were doubled, bebirchas Moshe. It's referring to the brachas that Moshe gave, which are Dan, Zavulun, Gad, V'asher, and Naphtali. Those are the Shvatim we're talking about. Hodiacha hakosav shechaloshem shebekulan hayu. The pasuk is saying those are the weakest. With tzrich and chizik, they needed strength. Lefikach kafal es shemam lachaskom. That's why their name is doubled, in order to give them that strength. Va'osan hevi Yosef lifnei Paro. It was those brothers that Yosef brought before Paro. Kedei shelo yivra osam lios rashay, so that he shouldn't choose them again to be in charge of the army. Rashi notes that all of the Shvatim, their bones were brought up from Mitzrayim. They were all buried in Eretz Yisrael. Shenemar, as it says, it says that you're going to bring my bones up. Now, and it says together with you. The implication is Yosef's bones together with all of their bones. It implies that even their bones were also brought up. The only reason Yosef is written outright and not the other Shvatim is that's just to tell you a praise of Moshe Rabbeinu. Shekol Yisrael nesasku bebiza, because all of the rest of Klal Yisrael, they were dealing with the plunder, with the loot. V'hu asak b'mitzvah, but he kept busy doing the mitzvah in order to take the bones of Yosef to bury them properly. Megulgol and Ba'aron, it said that the bones of Yehuda were rolling in the coffin. Lohoya shildo kayemis u'mechuber, so it wasn't attached properly. Mibnei nidoy dekamar leYaakov, because there was a nidoy on him. It was like an ostracization, because he had said to Yaakov, he said, if I don't bring him back to you, he was saying to Yaakov, then it will be a sin that I will have to you all of the days, and essentially it was like a curse. Now, even though he did bring him back and the condition was fulfilled, we learn in Meseches Makkos, that if you have a curse of a wise person, even if there is a condition, but nevertheless that curse is going to come true. And so then he said, who caused Reuven to admit it was Yehuda? This is a Medrash Agada in the Tanchuma. Mikevan Shahoda Yehuda V'Yamar Tzad Kamimeni. Once Yehuda admitted to his sin when he said the words Tzad Kamimeni, Amar Reuven V'Yamar Ani Bilbalti Yitzuyavi. So Reuven got up and he admitted his sin about mixing up the bed of his father. Again, at that point in time, each of the bones entered the socket properly. And finally, he wasn't able to say something according to the halacha. He wasn't able to say the sugya according to the halacha, and in the end he was. And the Gemara continues, Amarle Rava l'Rabba bar Mori. Rava said to Rabba bar Mori, Menoha milsa da amri inshi. From where do we know this idea that people say, Basar anya azla anyusa, that after the poor comes poverty, meaning poverty follows around those who are poor. Amarle said to him, the Tanan, because we learned in the Mishnah, Ashirim, Mevian bikurim bekilsa shel zav shel kesef. It says that the wealthy, they would bring their bikurim in baskets of gold and silver. V'aniyim besali nitzarim shel arava klufa. And the poor, they would bring their bikurim in wicker baskets that were made of peeled willow. Hasalim v'habikurim nostim lekohanim, and by the poor, it was both the baskets and the bikurim that were given to the kohanim, meaning they would lose their baskets, whereas the wealthy, they would actually get back their baskets of gold and silver. That's the idea that poverty follows the poor. Amar le, he said back to him, Ata amar mehasam, you have a source from over there, v'ano amina mehachan, I have a source from over here. And Rashi explains, Hasalim v'abikur nosnin lakohen v'ashirim lohayu nosnin kilsosein lakohen. The wealthy people did not give their baskets to the kohen, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Tzadi Beis Amid Beis.